if you take the pleasure out of playing, then what's the point of doing it? You go through the motions. You're not going to have fun, and the people listening to you aren't going to have fun either.
Welcome to the Acoustic Guitar Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Grizzle, joined for this episode by co-host Jeffrey Pepper Rogers. We sat down with Bruce Cockburn just after the release of his latest album, O Sun, O Moon, and were thrilled not only to talk about his music and career, but to basically get a masterclass in EADGAD tuning. That was Bruce's interpretation of our theme song at the top of the episode. Before we dive in, I'd like to remind you that this is a listener-funded show. If you like the podcast and have the means to chip in, please do. Membership starts at just $1 and comes with great perks like bonus episodes, lessons, and songs to play. Learn more at patreon.com/acousticguitarplus. You'll find that link, along with links to additional resources related to this episode, in the show notes. Thanks for your support. Writing for Acoustic Guitar Magazine in 2019, my co-host Jeffrey Pepper Rogers said, "Over a career spanning 5 decades, Bruce Cockburn has traversed an extraordinarily wide landscape on the guitar, from fingerstyle, folk, country blues, and gospel to edgy rock and exploratory jazz, all in the service of his songwriting muse. What's even more remarkable is that he's done this not just as a band leader, but also as a solo acoustic performer. In Cockburn's hands, the guitar becomes a true band in a box, delivering powerful grooves, riffs, melodies, harmonized lines, and improvised solos in real time." We kick things off with a question about how he does it.
I think more than 20 years ago when we talked, and there was something you said about writing songs and asking yourself, what do I say that I haven't said before? You've made such a tremendous amount of music for so long. What I wonder is, so with what you've been writing recently and what we're hearing on this album, are there aspects to that, particular themes or type of songs or content that you felt like, yeah, this is something I haven't done this way before?
I'm always on the lookout for those kinds of things, but it's not something that I'm able to plan very well. Some of it is kind of is defensive maneuverings. I'll come up with what I think is an idea, and then I realize, no, this has been done already by me. And I mean, I don't even think about whether it's been done by somebody else at that point. It's just like, but eventually that comes into it as well. Like, I don't want to be imitating anyone in particular. We all draw from kind of the same pool in a way, but that said, you still don't want to sound like other people. So, but I'm especially conscious of that. Conscious isn't the right word. I'm potentially embarrassed by saying the same thing I already said. I mean, you can only say so many things. Like, your life, all of our lives are just made up of what they're made up of, and that's what you have to work with. But you can find new ways to say the same thing, or find a new thing to say, or any number of shadings of that's what I find myself looking for. So it's. But that's kind of after the fact. It's like, if I discover that I've done something that I don't like for that reason, then that has to go, and then I got to find something to replace it. But in the actual original process of writing, I'm not thinking about that too much. It's just like, what's next? Here's an idea. Here's a line. Here's a verse. Then what?
When you look back on the songs you've done, like you said, there's a lot of themes. You could say the same thing in a different way.
There's certain themes that loom large in my stuff, for sure. And I mean, spirituality is one big one, and nature as a source of both inspiration and imagery, and of pain and fear also, when you look at how threatened it all is. That's a big part of what I do. But I mean, it's basically all the ingredients of our lives that we have in common. I mean, each of us has a different take on those basic themes because our experiences are all different, and we're different people. But the themes, it's kind of birth, death, infinity, and whatever connects those notions.
And when you look back on them, do you ever see how has your perspective shifted? Like maybe you don't want to play certain songs live anymore because you have a different way of thinking about something like that. Are there any songs like that you're just not really into playing live anymore?
Well, there's lots of songs I'm not into playing live anymore. Some of them because my hands won't work and to play them. Some of them because, if I had a rocket launcher, you might be thinking of that one. There's a lot of times when I don't play that, but not so much because I don't stand behind what it says. I mean, what people miss a lot in that song is the word "if." It's not a statement of intention. It's actually a kind of a cry of pain at having that kind of feeling in me, and that's what I wanted to share with people in putting the song out. When I find myself not wanting to sing it and that's been true for the last year anyway, since Russia invaded Ukraine, too many people are cheering at the end of that song. And I don't mean just applauding the performance of the song, but cheering when they hear the phrase "some son of a bitch would die." They're going, yeah, and I hate that. I don't want to hear it, so I don't do the song. And that I felt the same way about it after 9/11. It's like the wrong. People are getting the wrong message from the song in the context, so I'd rather not go there. But I don't disown the song at all, or the truth of what it was trying to say at the time I wrote it.
Is there anything new you've been playing around with? Any new toys? Any cool effects? Any new guitars you've been messing around with?
Well, it's not exactly new at this point, but the guitar that I've been particularly in love with for the last while is the Boucher that I was given. This is going back a couple of years now, but when I was inducted into the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame, there were three of us that are sort of known guitar players that were being inducted at that time, and we were each given one of these guitars. And guitar maker gives you a guitar, maybe it's going to be good, maybe it isn't. And I've had a lot of guitars come backstage over the years that I wouldn't particularly want to play, and I didn't expect much, but I got this guitar out of the case, and it was just stunningly great. So it's what you hear on almost everything on Crowing Ignites. There's a lot of it on the new album as well. It's just I don't know how to describe it. It's a 6-string acoustic guitar that happens to be really good.
What grabbed you right off the bat for it?
The combination of tone and playability. I mean, it's right here. I don't know if either of those aspects of it will come through in the via Zoom, but this is in that. It's just a really nice guitar, and it reminds me in some ways of a Martin 0018 that I had way back in the day. I had that in the 60s. It was a really great guitar. I ended up moving on to other things. I got a D18 which had a little more bottom end to it at one point, and then that became my main guitar. And then I got a Larrivee made me a Cutaway, and I played that for quite a while, and then had a David Wren guitar for a while, and then so it got burnt in a fire at a studio, a rehearsal studio, and then I had a bunch of junk for a couple of years, and then Linda Manzer started making stuff for me, and so I've played a lot of Manzers over the years, and really liked those. But there's something about the way this came back. I mean, or rather brought back the memory of that original 0018, and something about the way this guitar plays relative to my increasingly arthritic hands that just works. So I've been playing it a lot.
What is what's the tuning that you're in?
It's the EADGAD tuning. It sounds like that, and it gives you all these nice combinations of fourths and. It's the piece, the haiku piece is just like. Thing about the open tunings in general is they give you different ways in which the open strings ring against each other, or the fingered strings ring against the open strings, which appeals to me. Like there's just, it's partly that kind of jazzy modal sound, and partly you can just do a lot of. Make use of the open strings in a different way than the standard tuning allows.
So just to be specific for people listening, so EADGAD, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And you're capoed up.
I'm capoed on the 3rd fret for that. For haiku and for, actually, 3 of the songs are in this tuning on the album. Push Comes to Shove, as I mentioned, and King of the Bolero, and they're all capoed at the 3rd fret for vocal reasons, mainly. That's the riff for King of the Bolero, and it goes on through most of the song. And
you've had such a great long career, but what's a piece of memorable guitar advice that you've received that stuck with you?
Wow. Well, a couple of things come to mind. Some guy whose name I can't remember that I knew in Boston in the 60s was a 12-string player, and I was trying to learn to fingerpick like Mississippi John Hurt at the time. I was doing a lot of different things, or trying to absorb a lot of different things through the music school, through Berkeley, where I was going, and through the folk people that I knew. But this guy, one day he just showed me what you do with your thumb to get that, and it, it's like, oh. And his advice, I think, now I may be mixing him up with somebody else now, but if you want to be that kind of finger picker, do this while you're watching the baseball game. Till you can do it without thinking at all. And then you can start putting stuff on top of it, If you want, this is alternating bass, but you could be doing it that. But just get the thumb to work on its own. That was one piece of advice. At the time I was going to Berkeley, Bill Levitt was the guitar teacher, and he had ways of, like a kind of formulaic ways of playing scales and that sort of thing that I didn't absorb as well as I kind of wish I had in a way, but I learned a lot about that and about using the whole neck of the guitar. I mean, there's a lot of it. You can get by with just the basic chords, at the bottom end of the neck, but there's a ton more in there. And one of the interesting features of the guitar is that you can play the same note in more than one place, and not many instruments are like that. So that's something you can use to your advantage. Like let me take the capo off. But if I'm playing the same, this is still the EADGAD tuning, but without the capo, but there's an E, that E, then there's this E, but there's also that E, which is the same note, and a G, open G string, and another G up here. So there's just a lot of different things you can do. A lot of harmonies that are available, a lot of kind of, in a way, tricks, but that you can use by using the open strings and the placement of those notes. The example I'm going to give you right now is, this is the drop F sharp tuning, which I use for a song called World of Wonders. This guitar doesn't have a cutaway, so it's a little bit hard to play it the way I really play it on this guitar. But case in point is, the song's actually in E minor, but I'm capoed at the 5th fret, so there's an E note right there, right there. And there's the same notice up here, which I'm fretting with my thumb because it's on the 6th string, and if I want to do anything with my fingers, I gotta leave them free. So I get this. I'm going alternating back and forth between an E and a G, which I can do also by fingering the 5th string down here. So that can. Some improvising in the song is done like that, with the thumb fretting the E on the 12th fret, but in the body of the song I'm down here. So by moving back and forth, I can get different notes on top but keep the same ones on the bottom, and it's just it's that kind of thing that the guitar kind of gives you as a gift, because of the nature of the instrument. But it was really that guy on the 12 string, whose name I can't remember, that got me doing this as the basis for a lot of different approaches that you can put anything over that. That's basically what Mississippi John Hurt did, more or less, in his songs, and he played the melody along with that, or little riffs. So in trying to learn what he did, I ended up with a style that, combined that kind of right-hand thumb picking with my more complicated harmonies than he would use, and just a different sense of what melodies could be. I don't know. That's a long-winded answer to what was quite a simple question, but there's been good advice. But the scale thing really matters to me, because you can play like an F scale. All the way up the neck. Right, and this is where what I learned from Bill Levitt, that it's, I presume, still this sort of standard technical stuff that they teach you at Berklee, but it was hugely valuable in terms of getting beyond playing C, E, and G and whatnot, in the first few frets.
Yeah, it's like right there, right in front of you. It's just you got to remember about.
You got to practice it. I mean, that's the thing. Is like if it has that, as well as the thumb of your right hand being second nature, so that it does what it does without conscious effort. You need to make that knowledge of the fingerboard automatic also. And I real jazz players and real classical players have that down in a way that I don't. But I got enough of it to allow myself a degree of freedom getting around the guitar that I really appreciate.
On a somewhat different note, I'm just curious how at this point you look back at your music from 38 albums ago. Like what you were playing then, what kind of songs you were writing, like what's your perspective on that now?
Gratitude that most of them will never see the light of day. Actually, when I think about the first songs that I wrote, there's one or two exceptions, and we put out earlier this year. We put out the Rarities internet only album that includes a song that includes a demo recording of a song that I wrote in the mid '60s. That's the earliest one that I hope anyone ever gets to hear, and it's okay. It's an okay song. It stands up well enough, and the recording is decent enough that it was worth putting it out there. But there's over the years that some of the reissues have been gussied up with extra tracks that were floating around somewhere. There was another song the song I was just talking about is called "Bird Without Wings," but there's one called "It's an Elephant World" that's on one of the reissues that's kind of an odd song. In fact, that the thing that most reminds me of anything I've done is the King of the Bolero on the new album. So there's kind of weird reversion there. I'm not sure what that means. But so there are there's a few of those old things. I generally don't play them. I don't really. I either don't remember how, and I don't really want to put the effort into relearning them because I'd rather be working on the new stuff. But it's nice sometimes, like in the case of those two songs that are sort of okay, it's nice to have them out there where people can hear them.
Well, you feel like you've learned a few things since then.
Yeah, actually. Phew, am I ever? Yes. A few things. But, there's sometimes when I hear recordings of that, like there's some instrumental stuff from the 70s that what was it on? I think something called Mountain Call and some other stuff that's in the either on the Rarities or it's on some of these reissues. I listen to it and I think, geez, I didn't remember that I could do that back then, but there I am doing it, and I'd be challenged to be able to do it again now if I had to learn it off the record. So,
what advice would you give our listeners or any guitar player about staying inspired to continue playing guitar? Because everybody runs into those ruts, What advice would you give there?
I think, well, it's hard to know in general, maybe, but because everybody's rut is kind of maybe comes from different reasons. But how to not get bored? I mean, the way to not get bored is to keep learning new things. Sometimes that gets you in a rut because you get stuck on trying to get your hands around something that you can't get them around. But and if that happens, then my advice would be to back off, give it a rest. Go back to the stuff you like to play that's fun, and then after a breather, come back. I don't mean just within the matter of hours, but give it a few days or a couple of weeks or something, and then go back to it. See if you can make more headway. Because if you take the fun out of what you're doing, or I should say, maybe pleasure is a better word because it's not always fun per se. We're not talking about belly laughs here, but if you take the pleasure out of playing, then what's the point of doing it, really? I mean, you go through the motions, but you're not going to have fun, and the people listening to you aren't going to have fun either. And so you have to find a way to keep refreshing things for yourself. And for me, it's never taken all that much effort. I've certainly gone through periods where I felt stale on stuff, but something's always come along to fix that. And so maybe that's another piece of advice: is if you feel stuck and stale, just relax and and soldier through it, because it'll probably pass.
That's the end of part 1. Tune in to part 2 to go behind the scenes on the making of O Sun, O Moon, and to learn how Bruce Cockburn keeps his creative spark lit. You'll find the link in the show notes, or visit patreon.com/acousticguitarplus. The Acoustic Guitar Podcast is brought to you by the team at Acoustic Guitar Magazine. I'm your host, Nick Grizzle, joined for this episode by Jeffrey Pepper Rogers. The Acoustic Guitar Podcast is directed and edited by Joey Lusterman. Tanya Gonzalez is our producer. Executive producers are Lizzie Lusterman and Stephanie Campos-Delbroy. Our theme song was composed by Adam Perlmutter and performed for this episode by Bruce Cockburn. If you enjoy this podcast and want to support us, please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/acousticguitarplus, or find the link in the show notes for this episode. As a supporter, you'll have access to exclusive bonus episodes along with other special perks. And if you're already a patron, thank you so much for your support.